And that brings us to the next item, the charter school update.
Thank you, Madam President. I will ask Mr. Chris Van Schack, our Assistant Superintendent of Administrative Services, who also serves as the liaison for oversight with the Livermore Valley Charter School K-8, to introduce this item and give you an update. This is a regular report that the board has requested regarding the oversight and meeting of all of the requirements, both required and, well, requirements are required, sorry, requirements and also recommendations.
Thank you, Mrs. Bowers. It is my pleasure to provide you this evening with the first of 3 yearly reports regarding the oversight of the charter school. I have a brief report this evening, which I know is of no disappointment to anybody, but I think, moreover, it's an indication of the improved relationship that we've developed with the charter school, that we can provide a report that's both brief and positive in nature. Just as a little bit of background, just a reminder to you, about 15 months ago, in July of 2013, we began in our role as the Oversight Agency. Our legal counsel, along with district staff, created a checklist that the charter school could use each year to ensure that they were meeting not just the intent of the law, but the MOU that was created, as well as recommendations from folks who are involved in best practices. This is provided to the TVLC CEO and their principal, and we went over that at length. And this checklist is divided actually into 7 areas to make things a little bit less confusing. General requirements has to do with basic charter school setup, and then we've created fiscal and business operations, an educational program, facilities, governance, personnel, and student services. And so in each of these areas, we have required elements, which are either required by law or required by the MOU that we've created. And we also have recommendations that are suggestions that we've made, and we'll call them suggestions with quotes, strong suggestions we've made based upon what we believe to be best ways to run schools. And so here's a chart that breaks down those 2 areas, required areas and recommended areas. And you can see down at the bottom there that there are 70 required areas, and the Livermore Valley Charter School is compliant in 68 of the 70 areas. There were 200 recommendations, and of those 200 recommendations, they were compliant in 185 of those. And so there's a breakdown. I'm going to go over each area a little bit more specifically, but also very quickly, because I think it's important to note that, again, there are only 2 areas that we sat down and said, these are things you must do, that we found them to be non-compliant, and I'll discuss each of those. So once again, the first area was general requirements. There were 18 required items. They have met the requirements in 17 of the 18. The one area that they have not been compliant to, as of yet, is they're supposed to provide us with an update each year of students who either expelled or leave the school. We still have responsibility for in-district students. We're still required to make sure that they attend school regularly. So when they leave our school, or if they were never even in our school, they went straight to the charter school. Once they leave the charter school, they are expected, we're expected to get a report on them so we can follow up and make sure that they're enrolled in some school. The second area of the area of fiscal business operations, they have met all of the requirements in this area. We still recommend that they're diligent in areas of allocation of resources, as is necessary for all schools. We want to ensure that students at the charter school get all of the instructional materials that they need in order to be successful. And so Mrs. Susan Kinder is very diligent in her oversight of the budget. They provide us with documents on a basis that's a timeline that's set forth by the state. In the area of educational program, they've met all 12 of their requirements. Again, we continue to ask them to focus on students who have exceptional needs. That includes students who their strength in academics require enrichment activities. We also have asked them to be diligent in the development of a professional development plan that will provide teachers with the training that they need to address the new Common Core. In the area of facilities, there were only 3 requirements. They've met all 3 of these requirements. There are still continued concerns from the parents of LVCS about playground space, particularly fields. There are plans in place to develop an area between the current charter school and the soon-to-be developed high school for fields, and so we're hoping that that helps them with some of the concerns parents have expressed over physical education. In the area of governance, there are 18 items required. 17 of the 18 have met. We also had 40 recommendations in this area, and this is one area that we have some concerns. They've met just 31 of the 40 recommendations. We're suggesting to them that their operations not just be transparent, but be more clear to the public. At the different levels, whether it's the site leadership or the corporate leadership or the board, it isn't always clear to the parents, the community, who's responsible for making decisions. And so we've asked them to the extent that they can, and again, they're not required to, but to the extent they can, to be more transparent and more open with how decisions are made in their organization. And so once again, this is something that we've been talking about for a couple of years. It's not a requirement. The state doesn't mandate it, but we believe that from the feedback we received from staff and from their parent group, that it would benefit them if they understood where the decisions were being made. We also asked them, again, as I suggested, that they maintain, to the extent that they can, transparency in operations. In terms of personnel, they've met all 4 of the requirements that we set forth. We will continue to monitor their compliance in the areas of TB testing and mandated reporting. We do ask they develop a professional growth plan that extends to all employees, not just the teachers. And the final area is in student services. There was only 1 requirement, and they did meet this requirement. And so we're happy to say that, again, 68 of the 70 areas that were required were met. In the 2 other areas, we have action plans in place, and we're confident that by the winter report, they'll have met their requirement in those 2 areas as well. As I mentioned, compliant in 68 of the 70 required items, the majority of those that we recommended, 185 of the 200 items. I think it's fair to say that a once contentious relationship between the charter school and the district has thawed significantly. We are now having conversations about professional development opportunities in which we would include their teachers. I think I'm confident that when I ask them for information, I get it in a timely manner with little to no resistance. Again, I think the important thing is we set forth, the board set forth a very clear MOU. Here are our expectations, and they have done what they need to do to meet those expectations. As we move forward, I do attend their biweekly meetings. I make site visits about every other month to take a look at their school site, look at facilities, things like that. We do provide oversight reports to the board 3 times a year, so fall, winter, and spring, and we will continue that unless the board directs me otherwise. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that board members or public may have.
Okay, does anyone from the public want to comment? Board member? Dr. Dunlop.
I actually was impressed when I read through this, Mr. Van Schack, because we had a lot of requirements for them, and I think they've done an excellent job in basically meeting those requirements as we set forward, and there are a few remaining, but I think the overall scope of meeting what we expected shows very good cooperation and compliance.
I agree. I agree with the points that you made as well, though, that there seem to still be questions about who to call when you question the actions of an administrator, you question the finances of that entity. I got a call at my home with someone who was upset about an action that one of their principals took, and spent a lot of time explaining that we're not the place to come for that, that if you're unhappy with something that goes on in the charter school, you start with their staff, and then if you're not happy, you go to their board. And I'm not really sure, where that trail ends, but we're not responsible for the operations, and oversight doesn't mean that we tell them how to run their school. And so I think that report is really important because it covers the responsibilities that we have, which is to make sure the elements are there, not responsible for how they are implementing them. So thank you very much for that. And if there's no one that wanted to comment, we're going to move on to the general fund budget update.